So with that, we're going to start with an overview of the project and what voters will be voting on November 8th. So Superintendent Schaefer, if you'd like to kind of start us out with just where the project is at right now and what it is that voters will be deciding next week.
Thank you. The voters on the 8th of the month will be voting on a question of remodeling and renovation of the high school facility. It's a 1966, the first class graduated in 1966, and it's, for the most part, pretty much the same building as it was when it started. There were a couple of additions to the building over time, but for the most part, it is the same. And the question on the ballot will be a relatively simple question in the fact of general obligation bonds to the voters to the amount of $6.315 million. And that would increase their taxes at a mill rate of 0.65. And that's, so to speak, it in a nutshell, and we'll talk about a lot of the different parameters of the project in detail this morning in this half hour. That will go by rather quickly, but there's a lot to it, and yet I don't want to belabor this question. So it's relatively simple. It's a additional taxation at the mill rate of 0.65, and for that, the voter essentially gets $14.5 million because the rest of it is going to be paid for out of the existing tax rate of 3 mills on the capital outlay, and that will remain constant as it has in the past.
Okay, and to get to this point that we're at today, there's been some history, a vote taken earlier this year in February that failed by just a narrow margin, but some changes were made, and Charlie, maybe you can speak to that. You served on a committee was formed this summer to look at the project, dig into it, see maybe what could change and what could be done differently, because the renovations are there, they need to be done, and maybe there was some things that could change in the project. Could you speak a little bit, Charlie, being on that committee, to that process and maybe what you guys looked at as far as changing the project from the original plan back in February?
Well, certainly. Board Chairman Tom Farrell gave me a call this summer and asked if I'd serve on the committee to explore possibilities for the future renovation of the Madison High School. The board then appointed 3 community members, 3 members for the staff, and also 3 school board members. And the 9 of us, along with Mitch Brooks, met I think 4 or 5 times in late summer, early fall. Basically explored our possibilities, discussed what had happened before, where we're at, where we need to go. I think we all knew that we were still paying on the elementary school, and that's where we kind of needed to wrap ourselves around as to how we could bridge that financing, get the elementary school paid for. Luckily, we found out that we're not really all that far away. 2016 is in essence the majority of the elementary school will be paid off, and so we looked at the possibility of using existing taxation, as Superintendent Vince Schaefer's pointed out, using some of that existing 3 mills, basically fronting the cost of the project that way, but trying to keep that capital outlay perhaps not indebted to more than 50% of the annual revenue, so that we could be prudent in trying to take care of other expenses like school buses and textbooks and all that other stuff that goes with in that area. And then to complement the package as to how we were going to maybe bring down some of the costs. $17 million is a lot of money, and so the architect met with, I understand, most or all of the staff individually, worked through some ideas and approaches to where they could shave some costs, make some changes, hopefully make the plan better. And with some diligent hard work, it looked like they were able to bring it down about $2.5 million to about a $14.5 million project versus a $17 million, which gives us a savings of around a 14% less cost in projects. So that's significant also. So combine that with the financing portion, which I think Mitch can probably explain more. I think we were able to come up with a better plan. And so that's what the election will be about next week, as to whether or not the voters think it's a good enough plan. But in essence, I think we have a better plan laid out there for the voters of the Madison School District.
Okay, and Mitch, as Charlie mentioned, that part of that process involved the different financing of the project and being able to come up with a different means of presenting this to the voters. So if you want to touch a little bit, Mitch, on how that came about and maybe how the financing is going to work for the project if it's passed.
Yeah, sure will. When we came in that first committee meeting, I wasn't sure what the committee, how they'd respond, but we had about 7 different plans, from straight capital outlay to straight bond redemption and everything in between. And through the weeks, just kind of worked down what the committee liked and what seemed to work well with our existing capital outlay and what we could do into the future. So it seemed to go very well. I think the committee had a good basis on, making sure that we weren't going to put our school into a tough financial situation going forward, and then trying to bring as least amount to the taxpayers as we could. And I was very happy with the process, and it seems like we came out with a very good product, and we hope that the voters are going to like it.
Okay. You guys did make there was some, like Charlie touched on a little bit, there were some changes, some cuts, basically, to the project as a whole. What were some of the, and I don't know, maybe Vince, you want to touch on that, also some of the things that were changed, I guess, from the original proposal to the one that's before the voters today?
Well, there were about, a dozen or more changes made to reduce that $2.5 million. And they came in various sizes of chunks of money, you might say, in the fact that it's spread across the entire project. One that stood out right off the top was the auto shop area. Caught up in the timeline was the state funding and then our project here in Madison to look at our school. And it turned out that we closed the auto shop area, and that shop was 3,200 square feet, and that's a lot of square feet. And so that got the attention of the reduction group that was looking at things. And then you also reduced some office areas in the process. We took out the football lockers. Not the locker rooms, but the lockers, and the expense of putting those lockers in is going to be paid for by the Madison Booster Club. There was a greenhouse in it, a new greenhouse in the original plan for the Ag Committee, or the Ag Department, and that has been eliminated, and they will stay with their current greenhouse. There wasn't an extra classroom or an additional classroom being considered for science, and so one of those classrooms has been eliminated from the project. The new, in the old days they called it home ec, we call it FCCLA today, and there's a culinary arts program there that's taking root and becoming quite popular across not only South Dakota but the nation. It's called ProStart, and it's a career and technology type of course, training students for the world of culinary arts. And we'd really like to start into that area on a small scale, but we reduced the size of that area by 500 square feet, thinking we can still meet the needs of the students and the program. The gymnasium was reduced by 3,000 square feet. The library addition was reduced by about 3,000 square feet, but it still equals or is greater than the size of the existing 2 libraries, middle school, high school combined. It's just in a different location from where it is now, from where they are now. Some reductions in just across the board in all renovated areas, you might say. And auditorium, the auditorium is going to be refurbished. Originally, that was slated to be about a $1.2 million remodeling project, and that has been reduced some, not a great deal. But it all ended up to tabulate up to approximately $2.5 million across the board. That was kind of a painful process, but yet it was probably a healthy process. We still think we have a very good plan in place. It'll be a plan, if approved by the voters, that will meet the needs of the students and teachers for many years to come. We think 30 to 40 years out. And so that's the wrap, you might say, on the cuts and the reductions.
Okay. And Charlie, you had spoke to that too as well, that the it was very helpful probably to have the architect and everybody involved in that process of bringing the project down to a more feasible level. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but
Right. Well, I think it was healthy to go through the process. I think we gained some insights, like in the ag area. Also, the math classrooms toward the north end of the building are going to be tied in with the commons now. There'll be a new hallway put in. So we kind of eliminate the cost of having to refurbish those 4 math rooms. The science lab addition will still be added on to the high school, so we gain that part. The library, in efforts, will leverage 4 more classrooms in the middle school, and that's kind of a hidden fact out there that
Right.
that we're going to gain some more middle school room by, I think, 4 classrooms or so in that existing library. So there's some good leverage going on there in that sense. And so I think it was healthy. The architects met with the staff. It wasn't necessarily the committee standing in the corner. Why should we? They reported out back to our meetings, of course, but basically it was them working with the staff one-on-one.
so a lot of the people involved in the project, so that you got that first-hand account of how
Right.
it was going to affect them and where the changes could be made. So I think we'll transition back to the funding portion of the project. Mitch, if you want to touch a little bit on how that is going to work. What is the as part of the proposal? What are our amounts, and how is that going to work to pay for this project?
Okay. With that change in the total cost of the project, dropping down that $2.5 million, it really freed up what we could do with our existing debt to kind of restructure things. It gave a lot more flexibility, and what I guess the project as a whole, the $14.5 million, we're looking, to use our capital outlay, an estimated amount of about $8.3 million. We'll finance that over a 20-year period, finance around our existing elementary structure, and then pay it off over the remaining after that the year 2016. With then the remainder on that will go into the concept of bond redemption fund, just as a formal title, but that's about $6.3 million, and that's what we're bringing to the taxpayers to ask if they're willing to fund that for this project. Annual payments on that, on the bond redemption fund is about $450,000 per year. That comes that 0.63, 0.65 range per thousand in the taxation. With the 20-year, the $8.3 million, the annual payment with our existing debt will be about $1,050,000 until July 2016, and then after that will be about $700,000 per year. So then we will be tight the next few years, but we've kind of lined up our projects with roofing and everything else to make sure that we have everything in place that this is a feasible and doable plan.
And that was one of the questions that we received is, with the, for those few years when we're still, paying for the elementary school and making the payments on this as well, how have you established that everything will be taken care of? I guess anything that comes up is going to be able to be handled with the capital outlay being, not stretched, but just to a point where there's not a lot of wiggle room there. So.
And that was a major concern of ours also. I mean, that was something that took a lot of time and discussion and planning, meeting with our facilities director and then our technology director and then the different principals for the curriculum and making sure where we're at with our curriculum, when we need our next busing, when we need our next bus or major items, and just kind of put out a little timeline together of that, what we need to purchase now, and different things like that. So a lot of time was spent with that, going through making sure that these next 3 to 5 years, and things can come up, but we feel that we got a very strong situation. If we needed to push something else back, we could take care of our short term.
And how would that be handled? That was one of the questions we've gotten. How would you handle something? Say an unforeseen expense happens like that. How is the district planning to handle that?
Each year something does always come up. I mean, we had 2 water heaters go out this year. They weren't planned for, but we do always have something for that because something does come up each year. If it's something like major, like a bus going out, there is small short-term financing. There's also flexibility. A school district can borrow within its own funds for a 1-year period. Instead of investing to a CD, we can invest back into our own saving ourselves interest. And so there's some options to that. And then those are just short term, but that would get us through like a major type issue.
So the average property tax payer, the average homeowner, landowner, what is, when you talk in mills and you talk in some of the terms here that we're using, what are they going to see? I mean, what are, as a homeowner, as a landowner, what are they going to see, and what difference are they going to see in their property tax notices, I guess, if this is passed? What differences, and what's going to stay the same, I guess, as far as that's concerned?
As far as where the school levy goes, I think it will show up on their tax bill. It'll probably have the bond redemption piece broke out. The rest will be very similar to that, but it'll be, when we ask the dollar amount, it depends on where it comes in as valuations. We do have next year's valuation, so we know it's depending on where rates come in, that'll be around that 0.65. So that's 65 cents per thousand. We do have a little calculator on our online. Oh, you have them already figured out. Like the average home in Madison is 88,000. So at the 65 cents, that's $57.20 per year, just as a guesstimate. And it's a relatively easy calculation. Just take your valuation, divide it by 1,000 times the 0.65, and come up with your own personal net effect.
Right, and the same thing with land then as well, as far as your
Right.
valuation will come out and look that way as well.
That
Correct.
taxable levy will be applied across all property, whether it's residential, commercial, ag land, all the same.
Yeah.
And so, basically, look at your taxable valuation on your statement, and then just take that times 65, on $100,000 worth, and that'll be your additional burden or taxation. So,
Right, because the capital outlay amount is not changing. That's going to stay as it always has. Nobody's going to see a change there. The change is the 65
right.
approximately per $1,000 then.
On a note with that, this won't start for the payable 12 year. This starts for the payable 13. We turn in our levies before October each year, so it's passed this year. This election will go into effect. Project starting in April of next year, we'll start making payments into the following year. So it'll start in the 2013 will be the first year payable for this fund.
Okay. I think we'll take a short break, and we'll come back here in just a couple of minutes and touch on some more. We've got a question that's come in, and we've got some more questions to cover. So we'll take a short break right now for a couple minutes, and we'll be back.